Thank you all for coming tonight. It's great to share this State of the Park happy hour with you. I hope you all have a beverage of choice in your hand. I forgot mine. I've got my bottle of water next to me, but I hope that you're in a comfortable space, and we're really, really happy to have all of you here with us, all of our friends and advocates and supporters. I'm Susan Sherman, Executive Director of the Shenandoah National Park Trust. So welcome to this happy hour. I also wanted to extend a very special welcome to Senator Tim Kaine, who is on with us tonight. Also a very, very, very strong friend, advocate, and supporter of our park. Logistics for the next 45 minutes are, you'll be hearing over about 20 or 25 minutes from the two gentlemen that you see on your screen, Kevin Soviak, our Deputy Superintendent, and Pat Kenney, our Superintendent. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. You'll see on the bottom of your screen the Q&A. So if you would, submit any of your questions through the Q&A rather than the chat. And then after Pat and Kevin's presentation, I'll be going through those Q&A, and we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. So right now, I would like to turn it over to Kevin Soviak, our Deputy Superintendent, and Pat Kenney, as of 3 weeks ago, the new Superintendent of Shenandoah National Park. Pat has 30 years experience in the National Park Service, comes to us most recently from that small park out west you've heard of, Yellowstone National Park, as their Deputy Superintendent. We're thrilled to be working with Pat. We've loved working with Kevin, and I will turn it over to them now. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening. Thank you, Susan, very much for having us on tonight. This is quite exciting. So yeah, as Susan mentioned, this is the end of almost the end of 3 weeks. They haven't changed the locks on headquarters, so they're letting me still come to work, so I must be doing something okay. I want to also give a shout out to Kevin Soviak. He's been a great professional to come in to work with. Susan, you're spot on. He's been great and has done a great job of getting me up to speed. So any answers to tough questions, I'll defer to Kevin because he knows all the answers. Welcome, Senator Kaine. It was very kind of you to send a nice note to me, welcome me to Shenandoah. I'm sorry I wasn't here quite when you were out on the parkway riding your bike. I look forward to joining you the next time you're in the park. And for all those other folks that are here tonight, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your interest in the National Park Service, Shenandoah National Park particularly, and Shenandoah National Park Trust. The Trust is a key partner for this park, so we really hope that you'll pay attention to what great work they provide to support the National Park Service. We need strong partners helping us manage these national parks. I'm going to share my screen. We have a little bit of a slideshow for you. David, just to confirm, is the slideshow projecting properly?
Looks great on this end.
All right, thank you. So we're discussing the state of the park. It's been a busy year. 2020 has been an interesting year managing national parks across the system. In the 421 units of the National Park Service, we've been presented with some unique challenges and opportunities this year, and we're going to try to highlight some of the things that we've accomplished this year, some of the projects that we're working on very closely with the support of the Trust, and then also some of the things you're going to see in the future. Sorry, we're having a delay here. So I think hopefully the slides are advancing now. I think the first thing that has to be talked about, and many of you as regular visitors to Shenandoah National Park have seen this, we're seeing extremely high visitation within the park. The photographs kind of show some of the situations going on in the park as far as parking up at trailheads and overlooks. And then the photograph on the right shows the entrance station at Swift Run. This is a pretty common experience right now in the park, to be in bumper-to-bumper traffic trying to get into the park. The graph really shows you an interesting phenomena from COVID. The blue line that my mouse is following is this year's data thus far through September. You can see we crashed in April and May, and then since May, it's been a pretty steady recovery. And we've actually exceeded visitation from previous years. One footnote on this is years like 16, 17 were already high visitation years, and we're above that. Our staff believes from talking to them that October is on track to even exceed that spike you see from those previous years. Another project that we're really working hard on right now is the Meadow Run Restoration effort. This is a section of the park that has been impacted by acid deposition. We were fortunate enough to get funding to do some efforts to restore this and try to bring back this area from the effects of acid deposition. We are in the planning period of this. You can anticipate seeing an announcement in late October, early November for this going out for some public comment. We definitely would appreciate folks providing us input into this. The idea behind this project is to utilize aircraft, helicopters, and deposit lime sands across this 2,000+ acre area. And the idea is that will neutralize and address some of the impacts that we're seeing from acid deposition. Again, this is very early, still in the planning phases. We would anticipate seeing, if we make the decision to move forward with this project, that implementation would occur in the winter of 21-22. If you've been up on Skyline Drive recently, you'll notice some nice asphalt. We spent about $10.5 million on a 17-mile section of road. These dollars come through us through the Federal Highways Program. I will just make a comment. Shenandoah is very fortunate to have the high quality road travel that's available to us all. Not every park has roads as nice as Shenandoah does. That's a testament to the staff here and the ability to capture funds and get road work done. There's still more work to do. There's always work to do on roads, never ending, but we were fortunate enough to get this project done. The striping has been completed since I've been here, actually, in the last few weeks.
One of the biggest impacts of the park this year has been COVID-19, as well as everyone throughout the country has been impacted by this. Due to health concerns from several of the health districts surrounding the park, we closed the park to visitors April 8th. During that time, we worked on an adaptive recovery plan and several safety mitigations to make sure that our employees and visitors are safe and healthy when we open back up, and which we opened up on May 23rd, just before Memorial Day. That phased recovery was done along with guidance from the White House and in line with Forward Virginia plan. Right now we are in phase 3, and almost all visitor services are open except for visitor centers, the interior visitor centers, Massanutten Lodge, and Rapidan Camp. The 4 objectives we worked on to meet the needs of the park when we opened back up were to provide the health and safety of employees and visitors, protect and manage park resources and infrastructure, and then provide for safe visitor services that adheres to public health recommendations only after the first 2 objectives are met, and finally communicate park conditions through coordinated and consistent messaging. Some of the impacts, continued impacts that we feel from COVID-19 is staffing. Obviously, all non-essential personnel were on leave from March 22nd through May. And we've had a reduction in seasonal staff because of the loss of rec fee dollars and just hiring shortfalls. So Prior years, we've had 140 permanent employees and 120 seasonals through the summer. This year, we had 141 permanent and only 84 seasonals. So we had significant impact to our seasonal staff. Some of the resources that have been impacted, our walk, wall, and trail maintenance has been deferred. Some of the biological habitat maintenance and studies that we usually do in the spring have been deferred. Some of our replacement of our campground furnishings was deferred, and then also a big project on our historic Massanutten Lodge, the roof and siding work that was supposed to be done this year has been deferred, along with a few other projects that were too small to mention. One of the big projects that we were able to accomplish this year was the completion of the Old Reg parking area. This was done in partnerships with the Shenandoah National Park Trust and PATC. This allowed us to add, get the numbers here, I think about 120 parking spots for visitors to access the Old Reg hiking circuit into perpetuity. So this was a huge project that we've been working on for 10 plus years, and we are very excited that we were able to accomplish this. An ongoing project we have right now is the Big Meadows and Skyline Springs to Wells. This was a project that we took on because of some of the concerns from U.S. Public Health as to our water systems being spring fed. We are now moving them into a well system, and that includes new water lines, new electrical systems, new reservoirs, new wells, obviously, and new water treatment systems and housing. That project started this last spring and will continue on through 2021.
So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we're very fortunate at Shenandoah National Park to have a partner such as the Trust. And we want to highlight some of the efforts that they are been a force in helping sponsor. They contribute over $500,000 to the park for grants for a series of projects. And, you know, we couldn't do these projects without that help. So we do a program called Play, Learn, and Serve. It's been ongoing for a few years now. It's been interesting. The idea here is to get kids out into a park. That's what's shown in the photograph on the left. You know, get kids out, get them out and see these great places called national parks. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has happened, and Kevin highlighted some of the concerns there. What's been great about this to see is a staff think through this, become adaptable, and they basically built the studio that you see on the right, including a green screen that shows, and they literally are taking kids on a virtual field trip. You know, rangers have to pull all kinds of things out of their backpacks. These guys did a great job of coming up with a solution. I think the quote on the bottom says a lot. I know it may be small on a lot of screens, so I'll read it to you. I wanted to reach out and thank you for the wonderful virtual program that you provided for our class. The students loved it. Some families were so inspired that they have made a trip to the park. That's success. It's real success. And again, this program wouldn't be happening without the Trust. We have over 120 programs teed up between now and the end of November for these guys to do programs to schools throughout the region. They're doing 3 programs a day from their makeshift studio. The Trust is also a big supporter in helping us deal with human-bear interactions. You know, I just came from a park that has addressed human and bear interactions quite a bit. To see the efforts here is great. We're making a lot of progress. We need to remember that it's usually not the bears causing the problems. There are no problem bears. The bears are just hungry and they're using their nose, which is amazing, and seeking out food. It is us as humans, and we can do a lot to prevent these interactions. Obviously, that picnic table is not what we want to see. You know, there's no people there. So we're spending time. We have staff out educating people about bears, educating them about how to behave properly, how to use food storage in the parks. Again, there are no problem bears. It's humans that cause the problem, and we just need to get on top of that. So that's just an ongoing effort. And, you know, unfortunately, what usually happens in these situations, if we as humans don't do the right thing, it's the bear that pays the ultimate price.
So the Park Service, has to have, I mean, it's hard for us to meet the mission of the Park Service without the use of volunteers. They are essential to our operations and helping us uphold the mission of the national park. And that is true for Shenandoah National Park. And with the Trust help, we are able to fund a few volunteer leaders that do just that. Two of the rangers, as you see in the slides, one works as the volunteer leader for the invasives and restoration program. And the other does a lot of trail maintenance and wilderness projects, leading volunteers. They are a tremendous help. Bridget Harrison up in the top left-hand corner. Right now she has been able to manage invasive plants on 370 acres this year and propagate and planted native species on 4 acres. And Rebecca Unruh with the Trails program, as the trail maintenance was deferred because of COVID-19, was able to maintain the vegetation and open up and clear the trails on several miles of trails with the help of volunteers this year. So thanks to the Trust for that. Our Forest Health Project. So with for funding from the Trust, we were able to mitigate the effects of the hemlock woody adelgid and the emerald ash borer on several acres of forest in the park, and highly visited or high visitor use areas. This project this year treated 1,579 hemlocks using soil treatments, and hemlock sites were mapped at 384 sites. We also were able to treat 59 ash trees with stem injections using a tree IV system. All trees were inventoried and mapped. Staff worked with 2 resource interns and 3 previously trained volunteers to conduct the work. It's been a tremendous help with maintaining our forest health, and we hope to continue that in the future. This is a huge project that we are in partnership with the Trust on. Boulder Cabin is in the Skyland area, and it's a historic cabin that dates back to the induction of the park. What we are looking to do is do a full historic restoration of the cabin from the bottom, from the foundation all the way up to the roof. And in the interior, we're going to do some kind of renovation, adding modern interior and furnishings and an HVAC system. When this project is completed, it will give the Artists in Residence program a permanent home, and the Shenandoah National Park Trust will have the lease on that building so when the Artists in Residence isn't in the building, it'll be for use of the Trust. The Artists in Residence program is very popular amongst park visitors and staff. This year we had 5 artists. One actually presented her work to the second lady during her visit. Usually we have a high number of applicants. This year we had 377 applicants to the program, and they produce a tremendous amount of work that inspires people to be stewards of the park and become friends of nature. The Trust also helps us with funding trail maintenance programs. This funding helps us maintain a lot of the trails that we would otherwise be unable to maintain. And as you can see in the pictures, they do trail clearings, and they do the funding that they give us does a great job with allowing people to access some of the wonderful beauty of the park. They also fund a youth conservation corps. So this year we were able to host a 6-person crew for 8 weeks through funding from the trust. And they logged 2,000 hours of service. They worked on several different projects throughout the park to help maintain and protect our resources and visitor use areas such as trails. And our interns, we had 3 interns this year that we were able to host with funding from the trust. And I'm looking up their names right now. Okay, so 2 interns helped the Interpret Education program, Ben Johnson and Cassandra Reed. Ben was also, with his experience here at the park, was also went on to be hired as a seasonal employee this fall after his internship. And then we also had one media intern, Madison Heiser, who came from the geoscientists in the park program, and she was essential to our media staff. She did some great work, and we hope the best for her future. And hopefully she can return to the park next summer.
So we want to look a little bit and give you a sense of what's coming down the pipe for 21 and beyond. So one of the programs that we are continuing to work on is Vista Management. Obviously, Skyline Drive is an amazing place, and a big part of that is the vistas that you get from the overlooks. One of the things, and this actually is a program that the trust also helped sponsor. They were able to get a grant from Greene County, and through that effort, we will be able to maintain several of the overlooks that look out over Greene County. You know, it entails cutting trees. Some of it's pretty tricky stuff. Some of it can be high angle and steep slopes. But it's a great effort, and thank you for the help from the trust on that. As I told you, roads are a never-ending process. There'll be road construction again in the future. We'll pick up at mile post 50 where we left off this year, and do a 15-mile section. You know, again, these are not small dollars. It's $11.6 million of funding. So look for that this summer. It's always fun to be visiting your national park and having road construction, but it seems like there's always 2 seasons in national parks, just like there are in a lot of communities, and that's road construction season and then winter. You know, I think one of the things, we visit national parks and we see the front of the house, so to speak. But our operations are quite extensive behind the curtain or in the back of the house. We manage a series of water and wastewater systems in this park. We're going to be doing some improvements to Elk Wallow, their water system. We're going to take on some efforts to improve the Skyland wastewater collection system. It's pretty fascinating to go on the behind the scenes tour of a national park sometime. To see all the operations that we have going in these places that we love. We're going to also continue our efforts. We have miles of guidewalls, stone guidewalls, the historic guidewalls that you all know the history of, I'm sure, quite well. We have programmed $11 million for guidewall rehabilitation and restoration. From our recreational fee dollars. These are the fee dollars that you all pay when you come to the park. We've got that program from 21 through 28, so we'll be doing these in segments. Couldn't talk about the future of national parks as a whole without talking about the Great American Outdoors Act. This act got passed into law recently. It had great bipartisan support, and the president signed it into law. It's kind of 2 parts to this law. The National Park Public Lands Legacy Restoration Fund, which is really focused on the maintenance backlog in national parks. You may have heard the term deferred maintenance before. These are all the things that with our facilities that need improvement. And then there was a permanent funding of the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is dollars that is used to acquire lands, both by the federal government, but there's also grants that are given to states and local communities that can tap into those dollars. It's never been permanently funded. The revenue off of all the $6 billion, yes, billion dollars over the next 5 years is coming off of revenues from oil and gas development in the country. So we're looking at $1.9 billion annually going into the maintenance backlog. There's an additional $900 million going into land acquisition. Shenandoah is in a very good place to compete for these dollars. The theory here is that they want to focus on parks that are high visitation parks. We are in the top 75 visited parks in the system. That's kind of where they're looking because a lot of the maintenance backlog exists, like 80% of it exists in those 75 parks. So we're positioned very well to seek for or capture some of these funds. And they're also looking at parks that have high deferred maintenance within our data sets, and we're also one of those parks. You know, there's several steps in this process. We have been working on projects to tee them up, so to speak, so that they're available for this funding. Right now, our national office is still compiling lists, and these have to go through the Secretary of the Department of Interior up and to do a consultation with Congress on this. We anticipate hearing about the funding on this project in the near term, but the lists have not been sent out to us yet. So stay tuned on this. This is the beyond, but we do feel like we're in a good position. So again, thank you for your interest in the park. It's a great place. I've been here a whole of 3 weeks. I'm extremely proud of the staff. I was out in the park all last weekend as a visitor. I'll put that in air quotes. As a visitor, once you start working in the national parks, it's hard to go to any park and just visit. But I got to see the park through the visitor's eyes and experience the high visitation level we had this weekend. But I also got to see the staff in action. We've got a great staff in this park. You're very fortunate if you live in this region to have this park in your front yard, and we will open it up for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Pat and Kevin, and thank you all for being here. So I'm going to just go into the Q&A and we won't be able to get to all of them, and some of them are common themed. So one of the most asked questions has to do with the high visitation in the park. And although we love seeing our park used and enjoyed, there are concerns about long lines at entrance stations, trash, etc. So one question that came in ahead of time was considering, especially on busy fall weekends with the long line of cars, has the park considered timed entrance passes similar to what Rocky Mountain National Park did over the summer?
Obviously, high visitation is a challenge that's happening across the service. It's been an interesting phenomena to watch this. My former park, Yellowstone, was seeing high visitation levels since like 2015. They're not always simple answers to these questions. They're pretty complex issues related to visitation to parks. So yeah, we need to look at a variety of tools that we may have in our toolbox. Kevin's former park before he came here was at Rocky Mountain National Park. They did try that this year as a mitigation measure for COVID, was part of that. It'll be interesting. We're still waiting to see what lessons learned they have from that. But as far as I know, and Kevin jump in, there hasn't been great discussions yet at Shenandoah about timed entry, but it's something that we have to definitely look at in the future.
Yeah, we discussed it initially, but we felt like we would to not limit the access to public who so desperately needed outdoor areas to recreate in at that time. So we did not move forward with a ticketing system, timed entry system. as mentioned, Rocky did. But as we monitored the situation in the park throughout the course of the summer and into the fall, yes, we've seen high visitor use. We haven't seen a whole lot of huge detrimental impacts to our resources or to the visitor experience. We have had to make adjustments to trash collection and sanitation, but we feel like the park is still in great shape, and that the visitors are enjoying the services that we provide and the majestic beauty within the park. So we're pretty happy with the situation as it's going right now.
Thank you. We had a question, Pat, you mentioned in the presentation about the stone guide walls. And could either of you elaborate on the history of those guide walls?
Oh, I'll defer to Kevin on this one. I'm still the new guy.
And I would have to go back to the historic designation of Skyline Drive. And I don't know that for verse, but those guide walls were built along with Skyline Drive. Obviously, we've been trying to manage them with, or maintain them with vegetation removal, mechanical procedures and chemical procedures, but just over time, it's old masonry. It's get a lot of use, and as we maintain the road, the foundations of the rock walls have sunk, or the road has risen to a point where they do no longer meet federal highway safety standards. And so to historically restore those rock walls, but also make sure that they meet a safety standard for visitors. But I believe they were built along with Skyline Drive, and they're considered part of the historic landmark.
Thank you. Question here, given the responsible access closures in April and the likely extended period before any vaccine rollout enables a high degree of public safety, and faced with the enormously increased demand for outdoor recreation, how confident is the park of being able to sustain operations and access in the coming year?
Yeah, this is the stuff that keeps you up at night in these jobs. You're concerned about your staff. You're concerned about their health. We're concerned about the visitors' health when they come to a park like Shenandoah. We have mitigation measures in place to try to protect our staff as much as possible. I think the key is to continue to watch what's going on in the communities. We obviously take direction from our national office as well, and we will continue to follow the direction that we get from the secretary or from the director's office concerning how we manage these. I think the key though is people are, spending some time out in the park. As I told you, I spent the weekend out in the park as a visitor. It's really interesting to see how much people are getting. I just feel like there's a lot of benefit coming from people being able to get to places like Shenandoah. You saw large family groups enjoying meals together or playing together, being outdoors. They feel safe here. And, we can't be the social distancing police for those family units or those groups that come. But I do think that people are providing, keeping the concerns. You see a lot of masks. I will tell you, you see a lot more masks in Virginia than you do in the Western United States right now. I've been impressed by that. People are wearing masks. I was out in some trails. People were hiking. They're putting masks on as they pass. So again, I come back to the fact that we are providing an open space for people that they feel safe in. I think we will have to continue to monitor what's going on in the system, in the country, as far as the level of infections. And we'll make adjustments to our operating plan if we feel like we can't maintain the safety of our employees or the public.
Thank you. Many of us who frequent the park, especially during the good weather, notice lots of cyclists on Skyline Drive and who are riding what may seem precariously on those very narrow shoulders. Is there any consideration for accommodating those cyclists with a wider shoulder or any other what might be safer methods for them to cycle Skyline Drive?
It's obviously we want to encourage, and we actually just talked about this on our social media post about bicycling. You know, there's new regulations related to e-bikes being out there. They've been approved to be operated in the park. You know, it's a great way to be outdoors. I love to be on a bicycle myself. It's complicated in Shenandoah in the sense that Skyline Drive is a historic road. It's got a historic district to it. So any sorts of changes to that road require a series of planning and consultations with the State Historic Preservation Office. We would have to work through those. I don't know, again, I've only been here 3 weeks. I don't know if that's ever been looked at in the history of the park. Kevin may have something to add to that. I think we will continue to message about safety, you know, making sure cyclists know the rules as far as lighting and things like that. We do offer some days when there are no, when cyclists can have the road to themselves, so to speak. I know that. I've learned that in my 3 weeks here. But I think it'll be a challenge to add a bicycle lane to a historic road like Skyline Drive.
Thank you. What do you see as the greatest challenge facing you and the park, Pat? That's a big, wide open question. You only have 60 seconds to answer it.
I think right now, based on the housing market, finding a place to live is the biggest challenge I'm personally faced with. The inventory of housing in the area relative to the demand is low inventory and high demand. But no, I think it's kind of funny, you know, I've moved around the system several times, around the park system several times. My wife reminds me of that regularly when we're packing, that my job keeps doing this to us. But I think it's, a lot of the issues are the same. You know, I think we need to figure out strategies that we can operate these facilities and these provide the public services at some reasonable level and have a good solid funding source to support that. You know, we talked a lot about how we're getting project funds through our State of the Park presentation. One of the challenges we do face as park managers is our operational budgets have been relatively flat since 2011. Our buying power keeps going down as prices go up. Those are challenges we face. We see erosion in our staffing levels, just our baseline staff levels. We can fund project people, but we can't fund the baseline to keep things like restrooms clean, visitor centers staffed. That's a challenge for us. So that's a challenge, and that's service-wide. That's not just specific to Shenandoah. This visitation thing that we've been talking about, there's been a couple questions about the high visitation. There are several parks throughout the system that have been facing this since 2015, 2016, mainly since the centennial of the National Park Service in 2016. We've seen a rise nationally for a lot of the parks in the system, coming up with good tools that are effective, that doesn't exclude people from being able to get to their national parks. I think that's the key, and that's the balance we're trying to always achieve as managers. These are public lands. We want the public to be able to get to them. So how do we create a system that's fair? You know, some people said market-based pricing was the way to do it. Then there's people that argue against that from the standpoint, if we start charging higher dollars to come at certain times, certain people that don't have the means won't be able to come. We want these lands open to the public. That's a big challenge. Managing the resources, things like bears, things like impacts from things outside of our control, climate change and things like that. Those are all challenges we face as park managers. It's also the things that make doing these jobs really fun. There's a lot of opportunities to try to solve problems, which I love to do personally. And it's a great thing about these. But I think we got to all remember, these are public lands. We are we are the leader in the world in showing the way of having these places called national parks. I just came from the first national park in the world. And that's a model that's now been replicated to 421 units in this country. And there are over a couple thousand national parks now throughout the world. So we got to figure these challenges out and make these lands available to people, preserve them for those future generations. But that's what makes these jobs fun and exciting. So again, it's a long answer, but these are good problems to have. We can solve these problems if we work together. It's great to have a partner like the Trust to help us do that.
Thank you, Pat. And I think we'll wrap up with one last question. How are the Bears doing?
Well, the Chicago Bears really suck this year. So I like to give Kevin a hard time since he's a Bears fan and I'm a Packers fan. It's really fun to give him a hard time, but no, I'm teasing Kevin. My understanding based on talking to Rolf about the bear population, we have a pretty solid bear population in Shenandoah National Park. And I saw one 2 nights ago up on the drive as I was going to something at Big Meadows. But I think they're in good shape. Kevin, do you have anything to add?
In the past, we've had some pretty significant interactions with visitors and bears. But this year, with the help of the Trust and the program they fund, we've been able to minimize that. And we haven't seen as many problems as we have previously. So I think the bears are in great shape. And I think our visitors are being well educated and how we can help preserve the bears' health and safety.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight. You know, for me, it was a wonderful opportunity to hear directly from Pat and Kevin, but I think also with Pat being so new, it's a great opportunity for him to hear from all of you about what's on your mind, what your concerns are for Shenandoah National Park. And I will say, and I'm sure that you've experienced this before too, is these park leaders are incredibly accessible. And so even if your questions were not answered tonight, you can ask those questions directly to Pat and Kevin. Just call the Park Service, call Shenandoah National Park, email them. You can email Trust for their contact information, and I guarantee you'll get a response. So thank you all. And I just want to wrap up by saying we value all of you for your interest and your support in this incredible park and the work that we're doing together. We hope that you'll continue to learn about how you can get involved. You can look at join us on all of our social media platforms. We're at SNP Trust. You can sign up for our newsletter. We're at snptrust.org. And we're grateful for you. Thanks for being here tonight. And we hope you have a good rest of the evening.